Argentina 1985 has been nominated for Best Foreign Film for the 95th Academy Awards. It's a film about a dark period in Argentina's history, one that continues to be fully explored on film. But exactly how good of a film is it? And what of its cast? Ricardo Darin anchors this courtroom drama as the chief prosecutor of the biggest trial in Argentina's history. How did his performance stack up? Well, strap in, dear viewer, because I'll be going over these questions and many more in this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on all new reviews I put out weekly here at Off the Cover. And without further ado, on to the video. One can't watch Argentina 1985 without a little historical context. The film bookends one of the most tragic chapters in Argentina's history. So it's important to understand how it got to this point. During the Cold War, the United States and Russia were locked into an ideological conflict that affected most of the world. These two countries couldn't outright go to war against each other without destroying the entire planet with their nuclear arsenals. So they opted to spread their spheres of influence across those countries uninvolved, the so-called Third World. In the 1970s, the battle spread to Latin America when American business interests clashed with Russian socialist ideology on the streets in Chile, Bolivia, El Salvador, and Argentina. The Central Intelligence Agency was in charge of disrupting democratic elections in Latin America as part of Operation Condor. Operation Condor was a brutal geopolitical strategy consisting of a United States-backed campaign of political repression and state terror involving intelligence operations and assassinations of opponents. They overthrew these democratically elected governments only to install brutal dictators who would obey the will of America's business interests. These operations continue through 2023 and are the primary cause of the immigration crisis on the U.S.'s southern border. One such brutal dictatorship was that of the military junta in Argentina. The CIA, through its operatives and assets, overthrew the government of Isabel Perón, third wife of Juan Perón. A military junta was installed to replace her. A group of military leaders was installed beginning a brutal genocide against political dissidents, members of the press, and innocent civilians. Basically anyone who was perceived to be an enemy of the state. U.S. Secretary of State and blatant war criminal Henry Kissinger met several times with Argentine armed forces leaders after the coup, urging them to destroy their opponents quickly before outcry over human rights abuses grew in the United States. What a charmer, this scumbag. What followed was perhaps some of the most brutal rule of the 20th century. People were literally disappeared off the face of the earth. It is estimated that between 9 and 30,000 people were killed or disappeared, many of whom were impossible to document due to the nature of state terrorism. By the 1980s, economic collapse, public discontent, and the disastrous handling of the Falklands War resulted in the end of the junta and the restoration of democracy in Argentina. Many members of the junta are currently in prison for crimes against humanity and genocide, many as a result of the trial depicted in the film. The whole ordeal left a profound impact on Argentine culture as well, which is still felt to this day. So now, knowing the background, we see how important both the real-life trial and its film depiction really is. The stakes could never be higher. It was the biggest trial in world history since the trials at Nuremberg after World War II. Ricardo Darin plays real-life prosecutor Julio Cesar Stracera. His performance is witty, wry, careworn, but idealistic. Darin is one of Argentina's most beloved actors, having been in some of the best films in the country's history. My favorite Darin performance prior to Argentina 1985 has easily got to be his portrayal of a witty grifter in the movie Nine Queens, a film I highly recommend you hunt down. The 9 top military leaders were put on trial for human rights abuses, and the film shows their indignant refusal to recognize the authority of a civilian court. One of those standing trial was Leopoldo Galtieri, who had been in charge of the military operation in the Falklands just 4 years before. His presence is not especially exposed in the film, but the director lets the unspoken anger hover in the air. Argentina's army was tough enough to torture women and children, but not tough enough to stand against a weakened and waning British occupation. Peter Lanzani gives a very sympathetic yet commanding performance as Stresera's assistant prosecutor, Luis Moreno Ocampo, who had personal and family connections to Argentina's ruling class. Stresera joked throughout the film by forgetting his name on multiple occasions, which only forced Ocampo to feel the need to prove his worth to the cause. One particular poignant point in the film was Ocampo's mother and her unwavering conservatism and instinctive belief that the junta was innocent. At one point in the film, Stresera remarks that their mission is to convince the middle that it would be impossible to convince someone like Ocampo's mother. Yet, in one of the film's most beautiful moments, we see that Stresera's presentation of evidence over many testimonies finally convinced Ocampo's mother of the junta's atrocities. Darin's interactions with Ocampo are a highlight of the film. Darin is tremendous as Stresera, a grumpy old veteran who spies on his daughter to find out about her love life, and ends up rowing with Ocampo about the extent to which he had stayed silent, like all the rest of the governing class, for almost the entirety of his career. The movie appears to have exercised a little artistic license in portraying the smart, young team of legal researchers that Stresera assembled to roam the country looking for witnesses and evidence. But they are not without their charm, and end up providing a little levity in an otherwise dramatically dense film. Stresera's closing arguments were the most moving part of the film. Darin's delivery is every bit as powerful as the real thing, delivering the final blow and end to a dark period of not only Argentinian history, but also human history. Never again doesn't ring any more true now as it did then. The film not only exposes the end of his dark period, but serves as a warning. This sort of thing could happen again, and these are the results. Movies and the broader popular culture are usually representative of the underlying human condition. They capture the essence of what is really going on in the world. In the 1920s, surrealism took over as the dominant theme in the art world at the time. Dali's melting clocks and the persistence of time represented much more than he was letting on. The world had just gone through the darkest period in human history, a war to end all wars. Humanity was shell-shocked from the trauma, and it was all captured through the art of the time. The common thread amongst most of the nominees for the 95th Academy Awards is conflict. It's no surprise that these films capture the anxiety the world is feeling right now, as we have never been closer to nuclear annihilation than we are right now. These films all serve as not only the artful representation of this anxiety, but also as a warning to humanity itself, that if we don't stop quarreling, the result will be total annihilation. These films are capturing the underlying psychology of the human race, and they're making for fantastic art. Overall, Argentina 1985 portrays only just one end of a brutal time in human history. The film is masterfully acted and directed. Ricardo Darin is exquisite as usual, and Peter Lanzani is quite charming as his assistant prosecutor. Definitely give this film a watch with subtitles rather than the English dub, as the dub misses the overall feel of the film quite egregiously. You don't want to miss Darin's brilliant acting if this is your first time experiencing his talents. This is the first nominee for the award for foreign film that I have watched so far, but it seems like it will be difficult to beat such a force of a movie. The movie is widely available on Amazon Prime, and I can't stress how good of a film this is. Please give it a watch. You won't regret it. If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more great content.